Alright, Mom, let's try this again. Since the letter didn't work, and for some reason it triggered you and made you threaten to call the police again and call your lawyer, and I'm not sure why that you were triggered before you even read it, so I've tried every way to communicate with you. So now I'll try video and I'll try reading the letter, and I changed the diplomatic level of the letter to be a little bit softer. My batteries needs to be plugged in. So the new letter, a letter of understanding and request for a resolution. Introduction and purpose of this letter. I'll help you take the time to read this letter with an open mind. What I'm sharing here comes from a sincere place, not to accuse and not to escalate, but to clarify what I need in order to build a stable and independent future. These are not abstract requests, they're specific and they're realistic and they're grounded in reality. And this is my add-on is you have a background in this and understanding that I've been trying to build a home lab for a while, and you were on board and you thought that was a good avenue for me to learn that, and that's a direct path to be a network administrator and many other things that are in high demand and can also fit my needs of disability and working from home. So I expressed for years what I needed to function independently, and I wanted to say it again clearly. I needed a functional home networking lab set up that includes high-speed uplink 10 megabytes per second and download link of at least 100 megabytes per second, basically what we have here in the house. A network administrator access, again, just like I have here at the house. And the first one, the high-speed internet uplink at 10 megabytes and down at 100, that is not available at trailer parks through the Wi-Fi. Network level administrator access, which is 100% required for me to learn my skill, is not available at a trailer park. And I need a stable, high-performance primary workstation, and that is the one that you just bought me. So I finished the project with that and used my own money and bought the graphics processor at $100, and I finally got that to work. And I need a secondary system to serve as a test lab server environment, and that's where I can repurpose my old computer. So most of the hardware, 99% of it, is already paid for. None of this letter is asking you to pay for any more expensive equipment, and that's an important part that I don't think that you understood or read in the last letter, so I clarified it here more. So I continued to say, and this is my ad, if you look clearly at all the hardware and expensive stuff, like over 90% are already paid for. The most important part you need to know is that I'm not asking for any more expensive equipment. The last piece of expensive equipment was a graphics card, was $100 what I paid for out of my bail money. This, well, it was really my money from an asset that someone held for many years. If you look on the next one, this isn't about a preference. It's about my survival, my disabilities, including my mobility, my it's not the correct word, but you know I'm kind of autistic, so that's in there, and obviously my ADHD, and how I've struggled to work in traditional work environments. That would solve that problem. And but when I have the right digital setup, I have thrived before, just like I did in building the business with Jamie, and just like I did at Limelight Networks, and built all the back end and all the technical stuff for MedRep Consulting, which was literally about a stack of 50 different programs that I had to learn independently that all worked synchronistically together. So this isn't some sort of pipe dream or something that I could strive for. I've already proved that I can do this, and I've been successful, and it didn't take many attempts. Rarely do people success at their first shot at business, but I did 100%. The first time I tried, I succeeded at a very high level. When the topic of the trailer came up, I initially hoped it might be a solution, but after we discussed the budget, it was reduced and the truck was no longer available. That's the Ram to tow it, and I realized my Tacoma can't handle that type of setup. And more importantly, where would all my stuff go? It'd be hanging out the back of my truck, and everyone would be stealing it. And my Tacoma can't handle that setup. It doesn't have the proper trailer hitch even on it, nor is it ever meant to tow. And more importantly, a trailer park connection limit and lock down the Wi-Fi where there's someone else that has the administrator level access, which is a 100% requirement that I have root level access, because that's what I'm being trained to do, is be the network administrator. So connection with a limited Wi-Fi with no administrative access, cutting me off from the one thing that enables me to be able to produce any sort of financial independence. We had many discussions about that. And also, there's a $500 lot fee. Understand there was something intended to help with, but given the history of communication and past promises falling through, I have no acknowledgeable. I I I have to acknowledge how vulnerable that leaves me, and I'm not questioning your intent, only pointing out the pattern that has made me very cautious. I've seen similar patterns before, years ago, when everyone pushing me towards disability, despite repeating and explaining of why that was not an available option for me. I'll add in there, I literally thought my life was in danger, and there was more to it than than the rest of the family, that that it was a credible and real threat that I was facing. And it wasn't anything that I did was illegal. I've seen a similar pattern years ago. I'm repeating myself. I've seen a similar pattern years ago. Everyone kept pushing me towards disability, despite my repeated explanation of why it wasn't available. I ended up institutionalized and homeless. And this proposal feels like it follows a similar path, and I'm deeply concerned that we're about to repeat some instance of that history. I want to be very clear, this isn't about money. It never was. I came here, all I wanted was to connect with my family, rebuild trust, and face the events that caused so much damage in my life, especially accusations that led to severe trauma. That's what I needed. That's what I hope you would help me create space for. So, this is not about blame. It's about working toward a better structure and dynamic, and one that respects what I need and invites actual dialogue. I lost my spot. I'm open to ideas. Did you hear that? I'm open to ideas. But if we're not addressing the core issues, then we're just setting me up for more failure, which none of us want. I'm not asking to be taken care of. I'm asking to be included, especially when financial decisions are being made that impact me. If there's a budget, why not involve me to maximize that? Why not treat this as a collaborative effort and a collaborative decision based on the highest likelihood of my long term success? And I want to gently encourage you to consider the advice you're receiving. I know Dan has been involved in these decisions, but he has a history of spreading misinformation, making choices that cause me harm, both me and our family, and it may be worth pausing and reassessing how much influence those perspectives should have. We should talk about healing and how to create conditions for stability and growth. That's what I've been asking for, and I believe we still have a chance for that. If we approach this as a partnership, not a crisis to be managed, we can find a solution that works. I never asked you to solve everything. Just trust that I know what I need and to be willing to work with me rather than around me. From the beginning, I asked for a contract, some formal ways to create expectations clearly. At first, you supported that idea, but as time went forward, the lack of clarity and everything else has created instability and fear. It would mean a lot if we revisit that in good faith. I've also asked for support for practical issues like my failing hard drives. I understand resources are limited, but when I brought it up, it wasn't about comfort, it was about critical data loss. I explained it, I showed you the alerts, I showed you the physical hard drives, I showed you the technicality of how they're spinning, where I physically brought them out and was telling you how they're failing. And I hoped that just once it might prioritize. And sadly, I lost years of my life work because there was no shared sense of urgency. Again, I'm not trying to dwell on what wrong. I'm just trying to prevent future harm. When you considered eviction or involved the police, I know it hasn't come from a place of malice, but it's incredibly triggering for me. Those actions come with legal and emotional consequences. I hope we can avoid going down that road again. We've been through this before, it only creates more pain. When I was younger, there was times when I needed protection and I didn't get it. There were phones available, the opportunities to intervene, but they weren't taken. And now as I'm an adult, I feel like I'm being threatened instead of someone trying to heal. The constant pain the, the, the constraints is painful. I kept quiet so much when I could have spoken out, and still when I express my narrative when I express myself, the narrative flips and I become the aggressor and you become the victim. That dynamic has never served any of us. So please ask yourself, has that approach helped? Has it helped us move forward, or has it only made things more painful? We had a verbal agreement. I was open to working with you, of being part of the process, as long as everything was on board, and I wanted transparency. I wanted to be kept in the loop, and I wasn't. And it caused me enormous stress, especially that legal process that was set in motion without proper notice or paperwork. I believe we could still move forward in a respectful, legal, and collaborative way that begins with a written agreement, something that reflects clarity, fairness, mutual understanding, not threats or surprises. Back in December, you were taking a surprise trip, and it turned out you were looking at houses. The omission really hurt me, not because I needed control over your choices, because that I needed to feel like I mattered to be in the conversation. And I know what was really happening could have been prepared, but instead I was left out in the cold. So you readdressed that and you said you didn't know you were looking at houses down there. But as soon as you started actually making the movement of buying houses, it would have been nice for you to be more transparent about that, to give me more warning, to not only get my data situation figured out, but obviously try to find some sort of way where I don't really care what my surrounding or living environments are. I'm not looking for luxury or anything. The only thing I need is a workstation similar to this little small area that has the proper connection so I can build my home test server, which will give me the skills very quickly, because now I have very advanced AI and I can learn about 10 times faster than I could before. And a lot of the blockage of doing the code, because it's kind of like mathematics, it's very easy. You just push buttons with AI to figure it out now. It's at a totally different level where I could exceed at it very, very quickly. And finally, I need to remind you that as a disabled person, dependent on you, the housing certain the housing there's certain legal protections that apply for me. Locking me out of the house, restricting access to my medications and property, and those aren't just hard emotionally, they also violated housing laws designed to protect people in my situation. That's not to be a threat. That's not a call. That's meant as a call to fairness, to do things the right way. And I don't want to bring it up, but I think it's important to also bring up that you keep making these accusations about me damaging your property, where I don't know how much standing you have in that, because it was very openly and clearly expressed to you, Carrie, that nobody was going to touch my truck or my wiring, and it was very specific reasons, and I showed you the pictures, and nonetheless, you had someone come over, and you know I didn't want anyone touching my stuff, even before my ignition failed. I've been telling you for years, nobody touches my truck but me, because I've had problems with mechanics before, and you can look at your dashboard and understand why. You had a very simple fix and they couldn't do it. Imagine them fucking with my wiring and it would never work again. It's not because I didn't want to have it fixed. It's not because I didn't want your help. It's because it's a very long, tedious process where you got to be on your back upside down for about 6 hours to do it. And it's a very stressful process because it's sometimes hit or miss. If you look very closely at those pictures, those are clamp on butt connectors, which are the lowest class of wiring that you could do in an automotive vehicle. It's a total hack. It's a total hack job that they did at Pep Boys, and it's a total clusterfuck. That's not the type of connections you're supposed to use in an automotive environment, and it's the worst scrambled mess that I've ever seen. But I have the pictures, and when I took apart the dash, I remember a few of the things to do it, and I'm the only one that I feel that can handle that project. There might be some other people, but it'd be very rare. I mean, just look at the dashboard of your truck, and my hack complication is way more than that. And I've been very clear about that. And you expect you to have all sorts of boundaries and legal protections when it comes to you, but when it comes to my stuff, it doesn't seem like you respect that same space. So I don't know how much standing you have about your complaints about me breaking your stuff or whatever, because if I didn't stop that action of someone going in there and they continued that, they could have easily screwed up my whole ignition and my whole system. And I don't think you understand, Carrie. That's my biggest asset. That's my only way out of here. If that vehicle gets sabotaged or destroyed, it's not like you not having something. I have nothing. That would be like me rationalizing taking your biggest asset and saying it was in good nature. I just wanted to fix it after you told me 100 times not to touch it. And there's no rationalization for that. So before you're accusatory of me of stepping over boundaries and breaking your stuff, you might want to think about that one. And wait, there's more of that, I guess. Oh. Let's take the opportunity to create a structure and mutual agreement, or putting our expectations in writing. Let's agree that communication is better than escalation. And most of all, let's do it in a way that neither of us regret. So let's see if you can watch a video, because it seemed very difficult for you to read a letter. So I'm trying every avenue.